What up, YouTube? We are back, and I'm super excited to be back. Today was an amazing trading day, all done on YouTube live stream. It was a fantastic day. I traded Coinbase, and the options contracts that I was watching ended up moving over 1,000% from the entry trigger, which is truly insane. And the reason I want to make a high-level video breaking down everything I was looking at is because one trade like this can truly make your month or even potentially your year. You always hear about traders talking about hold your winners, catch your big winners. This was an example of one that set up fairly straightforward and also wasn't insanely difficult to hold. It had very valid reasons to hold and allow itself to be a bigger winner. So you can watch the full trade in the streams section of my YouTube channel. However, in this video, I'll be giving you a high-level breakdown of everything I was looking at, why I chose to exit, and all details in between. So I hope you enjoy, and the next time I see you, it'll be the little box version of me in the corner while I'm going over the charts. I'll see you soon. Well, box me will see you soon. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to a trade review session. This is Boxed Me here in the corner, breaking down the trade I took today. Again, on YouTube live stream. I did have some issues with the stream about 10 minutes in, so it's split into two videos as I had to go reset my Wi-Fi. But it's all there. And ultimately today ended up being a really, really awesome trading day, right? I came into the day mostly focused on individual names and mostly focused on Coin. Coin had just had earnings. There was a few other names that have also had earnings. If I look, I know that Roku also had it, which Roku made a great move. This was an awesome trade as well for anyone who was able to participate in it. There was Roku, there was a few different ones, but Coin stood out to me the most, right? Ever since the previous night, I had looked at it and I was like, okay, I'm intrigued. And the main reason I was intrigued is because of how everything was setting up on the daily time frame, right? So let me clear some of these levels out of the way so we can go back to the daily and see. Because last night when I was checking it out, this is what I was seeing. I was just looking on my phone, just scrolling, and I noticed, I'm like, we are consolidating in a bull flag pattern at the post-earnings high, right? That, in and of itself, in a vacuum, is an appealing trait, right? This chart by itself is an appealing trait, looking to have a similar move to what Caterpillar had, right? Where it consolidates up at these highs, then breaks out the next day at the open. So that was the thought that I was having in a vacuum, right? But trading doesn't happen in a vacuum. And so it's really important to remember, while this is what I was watching on the 5-minute time frame, just loosely watching on my phone, what I was really paying attention to was what this meant for the larger time frames and the daily chart, right? Specifically, were we going to gap over red? Now, a gap over red is one of my all-time favorite setups. I have hands down made multiple videos about it on this channel before, where a gap over red is essentially, right, exactly what it sounds like. We are looking for a candle to gap fully above a previous day's red bar. Now, we didn't gap fully above this one, but we gapped high enough up that on the hourly time frame, we had started to flip the trend, right? Where we were gapping up, we were flipping the trend from this current downtrend into an uptrend. It was a very, very, very appealing chart inside of a vacuum, right? Then you go outside of a vacuum and you look more at the weekly time frame. This looks a lot like a weekly PHL, potential higher low, right? And so while at the time this is a red bar, right, I'm starting to see the vision of, okay, if this is going to have a positive reaction to the earnings report, if this is going to go higher, right, what would that look like on the weekly chart? Can I see that vision, right? And I absolutely could. Because of this green bar from the previous week, this kind of candle made sense to me, maybe even one that ran all the way up to 360 area, right? Or even went green. Green would have been a really big move, but I wouldn't completely rule it out, right? So the weekly time frame, we have the potential higher low. That in and of itself is a very, very appealing trait, right? You flip down into the daily, and we were getting a gap up on a red bar. Now, again, it's not a full gap over red. A full gap over red would mean that we opened fully above the previous red bars. But even by erasing half of that red bar, we had flipped the trend on the hourly and put ourselves in a position to catch the next move up, right? So now that the longer time frames have told me everything I need to know, it just became a matter of drilling into the smaller time frames in order to find an entry signal, right? And for me, again, I usually, my friends, I have actually not had the greatest trading stretch over the last few weeks. It hasn't been bad. It's just been a lot of small losers, a lot of stops that then go, things that kind of happen, generally speaking, in a range. Please excuse me for 1 second. Sorry, I had a random delivery, but the last few weeks have not been super easy and straightforward. I actually feel like of all the trades I've taken, today was hands down the most easy and straightforward, right? And really what this was again, using the exact same principles that we talked about on the weekly chart, the higher low in place, right? The daily chart shifting the trend. This trend, by putting in this first green bar of the day and then pulling back, offered us a clear PHL, potential higher low, right? And that to me is ultimately what gave the entry. Now, I was running back from an appointment. It was a little bit behind on everything. So while I got on stream and I was able to take the trade live, I wasn't able to get in the options. I traded some shares on the leveraged version Con L. So I was able to make a great percentage, right? Same entry signal, same trigger, about 10% on a shares position from that entry trigger, which is a fantastic return for a shares position in a singular day, right? I did not get the options in, which is low-key haunting me, right? However, I want to use it as an opportunity to kind of explain to you why it shouldn't haunt me, right? And why I should use it as motivation to capture future big winning trades, right? Because after this entry triggered, it was pretty straightforward move all the way up into 551s and then all the way up really into 360s. All you had to do was wait for 5-minute 1, 2, 3s to continue to play out. And that's what I mean. When I mentioned earlier in this video that the Pareto principle would be responsible for how your profits are split up at the end of the year and how ultimately whether you like it or not, most traders out there at the end of the year, 80% of their profits will come from 20% of their trades, right? Because there will be a few trades like this each year where they offer fantastic moves, right? And they are relatively straightforward to catch, right? Now, while that was hand down the best entry that we had, the 2-minute potential higher low, inside of that 2-minute potential higher low, we had the 5-minute 1, 2, 3, which closed at a gorgeous way at the highs, right? So while having all that information, right, this trade could have swept the pre-market highs and then reversed. And I was watching for that once we put in these types of candles. But we never got clues breaking under previous candles lows that we were going to reverse. And ultimately, all we kept doing was going higher, and all you had to do was hold. And one of these trades, can make an entire year. The reason I say that is let's take a look at the options contracts that I did not trade. While I was able to make over $20,000 trading shares, I had a very large shares position. I was risking, I don't know, I think probably $3,000 or $4,000. The R multiple was fantastic on my risk ultimately. I did not get the options, which I really, really wanted. However, I know a ton of students did, which makes me feel great. But this is the type of options trade that could make your year, right? While this trigger was occurring right here, right? The same thing happened on the options contract. Now, I don't think that anybody would have gotten a perfect fill exactly at 115, which is where that price is, right? 116. Realistically, the fill would have probably been closer to 1.4 or 1.5, which if you have a stop under the low means you're risking about 50%, right? You're risking about 70 cents. Those contracts ran over $7. Really, they ran over $10, which means the R multiple return would have been a 10R, right? $250 of risk could have turned into, oh my God, it's not fun to think about considering that I wanted to risk about $10,000.
on this position. I just felt like I was a little bit late. So I took the shares and then I probably got filled on the shares right here. And because felt like I didn't want to chase on the options and have a really wide stop. So I was waiting for another pullback. And it was a pullback that never came. So it makes me sad, despite the fact that I was able to have an amazing trade in my long-term retirement accounts today. So I'll get some tax benefits on that. I won't be able to withdraw that money. And I have the trade. And that gives me FOMO ultimately, because what an incredible chart this was. What an incredible setup. What an incredible move. But here's why I'm not letting that hold me down, right? One, I'm very fortunate to have made a large chunk of money on that today, even though it's in a retirement account, which I don't normally actively trade aggressively. This was a high quality setup. And for tax purposes, if you were on stream, if you know, you know. But the reason that I'm not letting this FOMO get to me, right, is because I've been around the block for a time or two. Meaning, I have experienced moments like this before, where I've missed a trade, or maybe even where I got in and I sold early, right? The better reminder that I'm taking away from this options contract over here was the potential it gave, right? And I know myself, and you all know me. If I'm in a trade like this, I'll have no problem holding it for 700%, 800%. You can go back and look on my channel and you'll see examples of a CRM trade, snow trade. There's a bunch of trades out there where I'm able to hold for a really large percentage. So I wouldn't have a problem of doing that. So the positive that I'm taking away from today, despite the fact that I did not make $100,000 on this options trade, the positive I'm taking away is that these setups are continuing to happen. They're continuing to present themselves. They're continuing to offer those opportunities. I just have to stay ready. I just have to be ready. I have to make sure that I'm at my A+ mental performance. I have to make sure that I am staying in an alert and totally ready to go mindset, which come January 1st of 2026, I cannot wait to be the most dialed and locked in that I have ever been when it comes to my trading. So this was an A+ trade setup. I wish I could say an A+ trade execution. An A+ trade execution would have included me also trading the options. That is unfortunate that I was not able to catch that move. However, I would consider myself an A+. I would consider this like an A execution in terms of the shares position. I did exit a little bit early. I could have held for another few dollars, but based on the dynamic R, meaning if we started to pull back from up here, I probably would have put my stop under these lows. I would have been risking like $5 or $6 just to make the last $5 or $6 on this position. So my R multiple had changed, right? So I took my all-out exit here. I was very happy with the move. And again, using this coin chart to trade ConL shares was able to generate an incredible return. And I'm very, very happy with that on the day. So I hope all of you had an amazing trading day. Stay tuned. I will be streaming a lot more. Make sure to follow me as well on Kick. Everything links down in the description. I love you and have a great day.